Good evening, everybody. This is Ron Turner, and I'd like to begin tonight's podcast. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. What is FrontRunner 2020? Well, briefly, it's something that we've started to create a community for candidates and the people who support them before they're running for office, as well as during campaigns and after their victories. It looks at developing a personal brand and making sure people are prepared before they make the decision to file for office. And it looks at someone's personal journey. And like I said, we hope to make this a community. We're starting with this weekly programming. I understand that the most embarrassing and damaging thing in my background might be revealed. Definitely working on it, considered but little action taken, not sure, haven't even thought about that. Again, I understand that the most embarrassing and damaging thing in my background might be revealed. Definitely working on it, considered but little action taken, not sure, haven't even thought about that.
Whoa, you guys are way ahead of the curve. And I'll tell you, there are ways around this. And so all of you thought about this. I'm going to go through this, and we're going to look at the statements. Okay. Now, prepare responses for a positive spin on any incident that might be questioned. I had a guy who, in his young salad days as a 19-year-old in college, was in the back seat of a car when it was stopped by the police, and he decided that since he wasn't driving the car, they really didn't have any right to his ID, which actually in the state he was living in and working in, that was the truth. But you know what? They still jerked him out of the car, arrested him, and because of things that happened after the arrest, he ended up being arrested and being charged and being tried and actually having to do community service because he was rude to a police officer. Well, what he took from that was, when we knew that was going to be out there, anybody looked up an arrest record, and in Dallas, our local newspaper, the morning news, when it does its big questionnaire to you, which a lot of people read, it says in there, every single person, I don't care whether you're running for dog catcher, it says, have you ever been arrested? He had to put yes, and then they give you a place to explain. And he explained. He was young, he didn't understand the system, he was a little boisterous in his not thinking he needed to do that, and he got himself in trouble. And so he used that whenever anybody brought it up and said, hey, look, I've just told every teenager and every group of young people I work with, show them your ID. You know, that's what you do. You show them your ID. Now, in the other case, do not lie. If you've made a big mistake, if you've had a DUI, be true about it and talk about how you learned from that. Matter of fact, I was sitting today at lunch with a woman who's a political fundraiser, and she was talking about when she got arrested outside the Cowboy Stadium looking for her belt buckle, which had fallen off her dress. Don't ask me how drunk she was. But anyway, she got picked up on a DUI. Actually, she got picked up on being drunken in a public space. And she said, but you know, back there in the 70s, we all drank when the Cowboys played. Well, you know, I guess we all did. But anyway, she was talking about how she warned her kids, don't do that. And when she's talked to people about it, she makes light of it. Not that light. It's the only drunken thing that she ever got. So you just have to face the mistakes you've made, come up with a true answer, and just do not lie. I had a candidate who lost by 26 votes because they could not face the truth about a problem they'd had. So really, and that was the difference between that person winning and losing. And then, as I said, the guy who found out he had a kid that he didn't really have, clarify misrepresentations on your record. Make sure that if you know about them, you can explain what happened and what may or may not have been said. So those are just some strategies for dealing with what they call negative campaigning. Now, on the other hand, you can go look up your opponent's stuff and hopefully they haven't taken this course and they won't know how to do these things.
That could be the subject of another episode. Let's go ahead and move on to the next question now, folks. I am willing to spend 12 months working 12 hours a day and 7 days a week for this goal. You got to want it. I am willing to spend 12 months working 12 hours a day and 7 days a week for this goal. Definitely working on it, considered but little action taken, not sure, haven't even thought about it. So I see the results here. Nancy, what do you think?
Okay. This is, okay, what I was saying is I worked today with a candidate. I picked her up at 6:45. I dropped her back off at 2:30 this afternoon. We went through 3 major interviews, one with a group that is heavily committed in the area she wants to run, one with press, and one with another person who has incredible leads into being a supporter. She left me, walked into a house where she was going to have to take over taking care of a 1-year-old and a 4-year-old. So this is the kind of commitment, personal resources that you have to go through to go all the way to the end of the race. And then the other question that comes along with this, working 12 hours a day, 12 months a year, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. Are you willing to ask for the support in time and money from your supporters? Today we met with a woman who doesn't have a lot of money. She has time and she has connections. Is she willing to give us her time to connect to those connections for us? That's what you have to know about. And then, can you physically canvass and go through the never-ending meetings without falling down and breaking something? And I ask this because I try not to break my candidates, but I actually have had 2 of them break feet when they were out walking. So are you physically, and this, I mean, I know I couldn't run for office because I couldn't go door to door. I couldn't do what you need to do because I have COPD. So I couldn't do it. So are they physically capable of doing that? Are you really physically capable of doing that? And you need to think about that. And then you need to sit about thinking those never-ending meetings. Can you do that without falling apart or falling asleep? It's a problem. I mean, it becomes a stressor that most people don't think about. So the commitment's not, it's emotional, it's mental, it's spiritual, and you just have to be there.
Very demanding, very demanding. So let's go on to the next question here, another important aspect of running for office. I have built strong relationships and influential groups who will support me. Definitely working on it, considered but little action taken, not sure, haven't even thought about it. Again, I've built strong relationships and influential groups who will support me. Definitely working on it, considered but little action taken, not sure, haven't even thought about it.
Okay, good. You guys are, your mind's in the right zone, especially if you're thinking about running.
Let me comment on that. Sorry to interrupt, Nancy, but
yeah.
Just something about, Front Runner 2020 and what we're trying to do here is I don't want anybody to feel like a question eliminates them. And so the point here is to walk away tonight with an action plan.
No, and what I do is when someone says I want to run for this office, we go over these questions, and if we run into something they hadn't thought about, then we get thinking about it. That's what we do. Now, business connections are really important, chambers of commerce, those sorts of groups. Another group that I found very helpful that also falls under business connections are these casual networking groups that are small business people that meet and try to swap business cards and stuff. They're absolutely fascinated when a political candidate shows up because they have things to say about how the political community works for them. So there's a lot of ways to look at business communities. Chambers of commerce are the most obvious. Churches. In some areas, churches are extremely important political groups. It's also a place for people to have a sense of who you are and to feel they can grow up from there. Political groups such as political parties, or basically it's going to be Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, Greens, and I don't know who else is out there, but those sorts of groups. If you're in a nonpartisan race, you can still use those groups. If you're in a partisan race, which in Texas is defined as any race that has a primary, where a political party takes over the primary process, those groups are extremely important. HOAs, PTAs, and Crime Watch. I can tell you, if you're running in a relatively local area and you can find out when they have quarterly Crime Watch meetings, Crime Watch people vote. They vote nationally better than any other group. PTA second to them, and then people who are tied to their homeowners associations, who invest that time in their home and where they are also great people to get to know. Now, how connected to these groups is my opponent? You know, if your opponent is the chair of the Chamber of Commerce board, well, still go in there, because I can guarantee you it's those that are closest to us that like us the least at times. So go in there and find out who in that group you can peel off part of their support from. And the other thing is if you are not good about asking for money, learn. If you cannot learn, then find a friend who's a banker or a person who raises money and get them in your pocket to help you with funding your campaign. Campaigns, unfortunately, run on money. Not just great ideas and not just because we're wonderful people. They really are raised on money. And you need to have a strong fundraiser. And I'm going to tell you the big secret about fundraising is the candidate makes the contact. You need a strong fundraiser to follow up and get the check. And I cannot tell you how important that really is to you.
Coincidentally, that's our topic next week. We have Scott Garrison of Garrison Associates in Austin, who will be talking about fundraising, and I'm sure he'll make that point.